Welcome to the Best and the Worst, where I take a look at a retro gaming console and give you my picks for the top 5 best games and the worst 5 stinkers for the system, as well as an honorable mention that almost achieved greatness. For games in a series like Mario or Sonic, I limit the best and the worst to only one game per series per list, just to be fair. In this video, the NeoGeo Advanced Entertainment System. In the late 1980s, SNK positioned themselves as a leader in arcade cabinet hardware, and eventually released the Multi-Video System, or MVS for short, which were low-cost arcade cabinets with interchangeable games. They realized a potential market for a home console, and released a limited series in Japan as rental units available in hotels, kind of as a test market. The effort was a success, and the NeoGeo AES was released to consumers in 1990. This was the most expensive of the 4th generation consoles, like by a factor of 5, and it contained the same Motorola 68000 processor as the early Macintosh home computers did. The NeoGeo was pretty exclusive, and it's a safe bet that most gamers had never even seen one back in the 90s. Anyway, let's check out the games. The 5th best NeoGeo game, Samurai Showdown 5 Special. This was the last official release for the NeoGeo, coming out in 2004, and oh boy did the console go out with a bang. This is the best of the Samurai Showdown series of 2D fighting games, and builds upon everything that made the series great. It's got a good storyline, amazing sprite work, fun and unique characters, good animation, and a soundtrack that sets the mood very well. The gameplay is excellent, and by this point, SNK really had this stuff down to a science. A great final salute to the console. The 4th best game on the NeoGeo, Aero Fighters 2. This is a vertical shooter where you play as one of a few different jet fighters, piloted by a pretty unique cast of characters, including a dolphin for some reason. The game features solid graphics, good sound and music, and really fun gameplay. The difficulty can be pretty intense in some places, kind of bordering on bullet hell, but power-ups are in generous supply, and it isn't anywhere near as difficult as its sequel, Aero Fighters 3. This game is one of the best console 2D vertical shooters out there, and by far the best one on the NeoGeo. The 3rd best NeoGeo game, Puzzle Bobble. Also known as Bust a Move in some regions, this simple game has inspired a ton of imitations. The concept is amazingly simple. You're shooting bubbles up from the bottom of the screen, and you have to match 3 of the same color to pop them, with the objective on each screen being just to clear all the bubbles in a set amount of time. As the game progresses, the screens get increasingly more difficult, and eventually require multiple precise trick shots in a row in order to clear them. Puzzle Bobble is amazingly addictive, and this is probably the best version of it anywhere. The 2nd best game on the AES, King of the Fighters 2002. SNK's King of the Fighters series is pretty well known in the 2D fighting game genre, with 2002 being a fan favorite, with an ensemble cast of 39 characters drawn from multiple SNK fighting game franchises. The huge roster gives a healthy variety of interesting and unique characters, and the game features a 3-on-3 team roster match style that would become quite popular in the genre. The graphics and sprite work are just excellent, the animations are fun, and with a cast this huge, the replayability is almost limitless. Simply put, this is one of the best 2D arcade-style fighting games ever made. And the best game for the NeoGeo, Metal Slug 3. Now, the entire Metal Slug series on the Neo Geo is frickin' amazing, and Part 3 is the best of the bunch. It builds on the familiar run-and-gun gameplay, with absolutely wonderful character animation and graphics, as well as quite a few unique gameplay elements. If your character eats too much, they get fat and slow down, and they can even be turned into a zombie. This is in addition to the usual gameplay elements with rideable vehicles, weapon power-ups, and a difficulty level that ramps up pretty quickly but stays incredibly fun. Plus, the multiplayer gameplay is amazing if you've got a buddy. Really, all of the Metal Slug games are top shelf, but number 3 is number 1 on the Neo Geo. Well, now for the stinkers. The 5th worst Neo Geo game is 8-Man. This is a superhero beat-em-up, and your superhero is 8-Man, whose superpower is, well, the number 8. Basically, you're a cyborg who runs around smashing things. Supposedly, this is based on some anime series, but the game isn't great, with uninspired graphics, unoriginal gameplay, and a really lackluster set of animations, considering what the AES was capable of. 8-Man is a bit of a flop. On to the 4th worst stinker for the Neo Geo, King of the Monsters. Okay, so I'm a big fan of Godzilla, Kaiju, and the whole giant monster genre, so it really pains me to put this on the stinkers list. But this is objectively a pretty big letdown. The graphics and sprite designs look almost like an early launch title from like the Genesis or Super NES. The sound isn't very good, the gameplay is extremely limited, and the roster of monsters is quite small. This game just seems really out of place on the Neo Geo, but thankfully its sequel, King of the Monsters 2, is much better, so check that one out instead. Now the 3rd worst Neo Geo game, Windjammers. It's Pong. It's Pong on the Neo Geo. They dressed it up as some kind of ultimate frisbee thing, but it's Pong. Now, the graphics are pretty good, the sound is fine and all that, but it's Pong. No matter how pretty they dress it up or what kind of box they put it in, the gameplay is basically right out of the mid-1970s. The only gameplay element that goes beyond basic 1970s Pong is that you can try and throw the frisbee thing with like a super throw, or gently toss it over the net like a weak tap in tennis or something. Unfortunately, that's nowhere near enough to redeem this one. Pong on the Neo Geo. What a mess. The number 2 worst game on the Neo Geo, Ninja Combat. This is a pretty lackluster side-scrolling beat-em-up, with really awkward gameplay, uninteresting graphics, and pretty boring sound. The main character walks around as if he's in a seated position all the time. Like, seriously, what's up with that? And he seems to get around primarily by doing handsprings everywhere. What's worse, the difficulty gets absurd very quickly. You can tell that this was intended to be a crowd mover in the arcades. Take a pass on Ninja Combat. Which brings us to The Super Spy, the worst stinker on the console. This is one of those weird first-person perspective shooter-type games, but primarily with only left and right movement. You're supposed to be some kind of a spy, infiltrating stuff, doing hostage rescue and all that, but this one comes off as a really lazy effort, focused more on some gimmicky mechanics than actually making the gameplay functional or interesting. All of the attacks are either way too weak or way too strong, and honestly, I was surprised to see a game out of this thankfully extinct genre on the Neo Geo, but at least it's the only one. And lastly, a special honorable mention, Neo Turf Masters. Okay, I know, a golf game. I must be kidding, right? No, this is actually pretty good. I don't golf in real life, nor do I follow the sport at all, but this is the best golf game I've ever played, with really well done graphics and animation, as well as good sound effects with voiceovers. The actual golf mechanics are intuitive, but, well, this has a lot of potential, but it fell short. There's just no sense of progression. It would have been really nice if there was some mechanic to use prize money to buy better clubs, or like if your player got better at putting or something as you went along, but there's just no progression of any kind, and it really holds this one back. Well, that about wraps it up for the best and the worst of the NeoGeo AES. I hope you enjoyed this look back at some retro classics, and as always, thanks for watching.